Hi, Robert out here from CV for Life. Right, today we're going to talk about reference checks, credit checks, criminal and qualification checks. These are all covered in my best-selling book, CV for Life. Reference checks can be one of the most important elements of the employment process, and typically reference checks are handled at the end of an entire interview process just before the offer is made. It is absolutely important to note that references cannot be conducted and will not be conducted if your recruitment process is not finished and all interviews or assessments have been done. Once that has happened, the recruiter or the employment agency and even the hiring manager will ask for references. So what is the norm? Most companies and recruiters will want 2 recent references, preferably from a senior manager or some sort of a line manager that worked with you in a senior capacity, but also some companies will accept colleagues, but it's really not a preference. Also, the most recent references are really important. So companies don't want references from people that you were at school with, or your principal, or even people that you knew after school at university. They want people you've worked with. And that's very, very important. The timescale, I would say, most probably would be between 3 to 5 years after you have been employed with that company. Be careful here. Providing companies and recruiters with references where you're working at the moment can be very dangerous, because most times you have not told that potential company that you are in the market. So companies will want 2, possibly 3, maybe even 4 references, which is rare. But the more senior you go up from a level point of view in a company up to executive level, they're going to want more. Overseas headhunters actually now require their prospects or talent to provide them with at least 6 references or referees to be provided. Let's talk about the difference between a reference and a referee. Very, very simple. A reference is someone that's prepared to give you a written reference up front, but then is also prepared to do a telephonic reference from an employment agency or from a hiring company. A referee is a person that's only prepared to talk to someone over the phone, and normally that's a very senior individual that typically doesn't want to spend an hour on the phone giving a reference. Reference checks normally take about 15 to 20 minutes, and these questions can vary anything from who did you report to would you hire this person again. That's right. It's quite a lot of information that this agency or hiring company is going to want from their references when they conduct those references. The big thing from your point of view, from a client, from a candidate and talent point of view, is to understand if your references are not available, you are going to be sitting waiting for that offer. So when you provide those references and referees to the recruitment agency or the hiring company, make sure that those references know that they're going to be called, number 1. Number 2, that their contact numbers are right when given to the employment agency or company. And number 3, that they want to actually provide you with a reference. I get so many candidates that provide references where the person referencing hasn't even worked for long with that person. You just can't do that because the recruitment agency and employer will really struggle to get a good reference, and you may be sitting in a situation with no offer. So, from a point of view of references, make sure you're prepared, you have that information. Even now, before you even in the process with regards to looking for work, know who your references are and let them know who you are. And make very sure, do not include your references or names of referees in your CV that you provide to recruitment agencies or hiring companies, as it could take any young apprentice, HR manager, or young recruiter to pick up the phone and call that reference and referee without your permission. And guess what? You don't want your references and referees being called 24/7 with regards to checks, as they just get very irritated and that counts against you. Companies will want to know that the qualifications you write on your CV and the qualifications you prepare to provide them need to be 100% match. There's always a matric and grade 12 check. Unfortunately, that's just par for the course, but your rest of your qualifications need to match up with your CV. So make sure that the dates and all that information is 100% right. Most people lie about their qualifications on their CV. So recruiters especially companies are very, very sensitive to this particular topic. Once that copy of that qualification has been provided to the company or recruiter, it should take 1 or 2 days for the check verification agency to actually verify that that qualification is 100%. So you may be sitting for 1 or 2 days waiting for those checks. The second type of check from a point of view of documentation check is your credit check. Your credit check is conducted through a verification agency. It's important to note that if there's anything on your credit check that is unworthy and not right, you need to actually go and sort this out with the verification agency. I suggest that you actually conduct those checks yourself before moving into the recruitment process, as you can see if there's any potential mistakes. And I can tell you right now, those mistakes happen often. From a point of view of the process, companies especially will want to look at those credit checks. Today, really, there's not a massive emphasis on those checks being 100%. 5 to 10 years ago, I know some companies that wouldn't hire you if you've got a default against your name. What companies are mainly concerned about is they do not want people, potential employees, moving into their companies with massive debt problems, as that may cause issues with regards to too many phone calls, absentee from work, etc., etc. So from a point of view of getting that credit check done, make sure that you are upfront, as if you know you've got a bit of a problem, rather disclose that to the potential employer, as it's better rather to say something than be found out later. But really the major items there are judgments and defaults. Otherwise, it's not even worth mentioning, to be very honest, in my opinion. In the next check is from a point of view of your work history. What you need to understand is, and most people don't know this, but in your actual check, you will, at the bottom of your verification agency check, have a portion of where you've worked. Now, that actual portion is not necessarily right, because what happens is the verification agencies collect data from all the cards accounts that you open. Every single time you open an account, they will take that information and put it at the bottom of your check. Now, most recruiters and hiring agencies don't check this because that information is not always right, and neither are the dates. I suggest that when you do your check, you have a look at that and have a look at the validity of that information, as it may be asked from a potential employer just to find out exactly where you've been on what dates. It's not very important, but I would certainly cover it. Then from a point of view, and the last topic I want to discuss is criminal checks. Now, many years ago, criminal checks were done paper-based. You would go in, sign a document at the recruiter. This would go to the SAPs. They would check it, and they normally took about 2 or 3 days to check it. And what was even more painful was at the end of the month, when they were getting all these checks, they would really take their time in making sure that all their checks were sent back to their recruiters, and you would be waiting, which would actually affect your resignation date as well. So checks today are easy and quick. You would be doing your criminal checks at various verification spots, and there's lots of them around. These operate in office hours, so you will be obligated to do your checks during the day. If you aren't, well, that's just going to signal to the hiring company and recruiter that you aren't really serious about moving. So think about that. This is simply a fingerprint, done 15 minutes, back to the office, and then after about 8 to 12 hours, you have the checks back. It's very, very important. One thing I want to mention about criminal checks is I have in the past had a few candidates that have had mistakes on their criminal checks. It's important to note that, again, you should potentially maybe do a criminal check at least once every 2 to 3 years, just to check that there are no potential problems on that criminal check. It's highly unlikely, but it has happened. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll chat to you soon.